Are there too many properties being held by Toronto real estate investors right now? Yeah, I know, weird question I'm talking about. We'll be going deep into this topic as this week's video because we just found out 11% of property owners own 11 or more properties. Yeah, 11. What the heck, right? Now, if you're looking for some data-driven realtors to guide you through your next transaction, because look, it's very weird again out there, like I've always been saying for the last few months, you can book a call with me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here, www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zhen, and I run a RE/MAX brokerage in the Greater Toronto area on top of making awesome educational real estate content like this just for you. And here's the stat. 11% of people in Ontario, so Ontarians, always get that, it's hard, right? Anyways, 11% of Ontarians who own properties own 11 or more properties. Wowza. You let me know in the comment section below if you thought that number was high or low. And if you have a chart over here, I'll put it on the screen. As a realtor who works with a lot of real estate investors, the chart that I'm showing on the screen really doesn't surprise me per se, but I would say that to have 10% of the people who own multiple properties own 11 plus is a little bit high, even for me. And I wonder if they include entities such as corporations that run real estate businesses, hold a lot of apartment buildings, flipping companies that maybe hold 10 plus properties in the pipeline. Maybe they include those, but that's still a lot of percentage of entities that own 10 plus or 11 plus properties. And either way, I think this number is going to piss off a lot of people because especially those who are trying to buy their first property. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I've always said our system is very broken. It's much easier to get your second property than your first because it's that much harder on your first one because of all the crazy things and saving with a down payment. The crazy thing about the chart that's on the screen right here is that 29% of the people who own multiple properties own 4 or more properties. While that didn't shock me when you combine it with the Ontario population base, it meant that 7% of people who own properties own 4 or more properties. That seems surprisingly high to me as well. It's that's interesting. Look, I get if you own 1 to 2 properties in Ontario because I actually personally think that's quite normal because in the past, and I've said this many times before, right? Once you get your first property, say you live in a condo in say the GTA, you move up the real estate ladder, right? So your condo appreciates a bit, you get into a freehold, your family grows, whatever, right? And you can get into a semi or a detached and et cetera, et cetera. And in that process of moving up, we always do the math with our buyers to see if they can refinance their first property, being the condo that they bought in, say, the GTA, and then get the down payment out of that, rent out that same condo because values went up, rents have gone up, and then hold that condo while they buy the next property to see if it actually makes sense as an investment. So while those, I guess our clients didn't intend to be investors and hold multiple properties, it sometimes ends up that way, right? Look, most realtors will probably not do that for their clients because that's one less transaction and sale for them. But we truly look out for our clients' best interest. So if we do that, you have to have that conversation. Be look, do you want to do this because your monthly payment is roughly the same, right? And you can carry it and hold the property, right? So by accident, these move up buyers become multiple property owners, right? So that generally puts up in the 2 property bucket, right? So it's not that bad. But to get to say 7% of the Ontario population base who owns 4 properties or more is a little bit wild, even in my mind, right? And keep in mind, this data is from Terranet, so it doesn't count any kind of non-closed pre-construction properties that are still under contract that they would have bought. So that could skew the number up a little bit more, right? Now, if you found this content useful, it probably means someone else will as well. Or if you want to talk about investors, put it in the comment section below because this is kind of why I made this video. And while you're at it, make sure to subscribe to the Prime Props channel so you know when I drop awesome content like this. And if you're looking for some help on how to navigate this real estate market, or you want to be one of these investors in Ontario who owns multiple properties, you can book a call with me using a link that's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. And like I was saying a little bit earlier, this is actually a good market for anyone who is trying to move up right now because the thing you're trying to buy got less expensive. And if you can carry the thing that you already own, moving up, you actually make the biggest savings. And we'll try to see if we can save that based on the rents, right? Now, as you can see in my previous videos, I've talked about this chart below. It's basically saying that the amount of interest for multiple property owners in the last 5 years, and you can clearly see, I'll draw in the arrow here, that the green line has went straight up and surpassed the first-time home buyers. And obviously, like if you think about it, a lot of it had to do with the interest rates in the last 2 years, which you can clearly see spiked, right? And this is right after the lockdowns. Now, that's obvious, and I showed you this chart before, but here's another chart that I found rather interesting as well. Now, this chart shows how many of the multi-property owners have sold a property since 2000. And you can consistently see that in the last 5 years, about 42 or 43% of them have not sold anything and essentially are holding onto their property. Now, 27% of them have sold one, and 14% of them had sold 2+ properties, leaving that kind of little fragment in the middle of about like 17, 18% of multi-properties selling 3 of them. Now, what this means is that it's shocking that it only represents 4% of the total Ontario transactions, which is less than what I would have thought. Because how I interpret this is that this data is saying that anyone who's sold or selling 3 or more properties is likely flipping like a home, or just bought something and they didn't do well, and I would say a little bit of speculation, right? So there would be speculators, not investors. That, or you just love moving and breaking the properties multiple times, which makes no sense, by the way. And I would say that number is quite small. But it seems that many know like buying and holding is really the way to go. And you can see this in the data, right? Now, do take this data with a grain of salt, because it doesn't have any of the 2022 numbers I was talking about, or any pre-construction data, which could skew that number a lot higher given what has happened in the last 2 years, right? Like tons of pre-construction have moved, and also like the 2017 pre-constructions haven't all fully closed yet. And that was a big year. Now, the last thing I want to show you is a map of Ontario with multiple property owners, which I found quite interesting. Now, when I look at this, I was like, oh, 2 things jump out. A lot of multiple property owners own cottages, which is exactly what I suspected. And the first chart I showed you with 2+ properties really isn't that bad. See what I mean? Either you have a move-up buyer who retains their previous property, or a cottage, which is very common in the Canadian zeitgeist. And you can see this in the surrounding areas by Muskoka, right? Now, Toronto has a high 29% number, and I suspect this has to do a lot with like condo investors, because it's easier to enter the market. And it's happening the same with like the Peel and the York region, as those areas have gotten more dense and more condos are forming, right? So it means easier entry point for investors. And none of this surprises me. This leaves a lot of the other regions that don't have any condos, resulting in multiple property owners effectively saying that they hold freehold properties, like ground-based properties, like land, like bungalows and stuff, right? Which, when I read the data, it was a shocking 72% of those properties were owned. And if you're wondering why Middlesex is so high at like 33 point something percent, that's the region that London, Ontario is in. And according to Stats Can, London, Ontario makes up 90% of that population county. So there's a lot of investors in that pocket, which makes sense because it's done really well. And it's also near Western, which is totally wild. So what's the final verdict from looking at all this data provided by TerraNet? Well, it just proves that there's tons of investors in Ontario, even prior to the big push we saw in the last 2 years, which was driven by interest rates. But you could tell that a lot of people believe in real estate, and the most common strategy has been buying and holding, a strategy I personally 100% agree with. So if you are looking to find a way into the real estate market, whether it's your first property, moving up and trying to keep your existing property, or just trying to start learning about real estate investing, you can book a call with me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.